So we're going to talk about a new way that we might want to store sessions for product analytics, making use of ClickHouse's aggregating tables, which is very cool. So I'll share my screen and then show you how it works. So I'll link in the description the issue where I'm kind of describing what the crux of the problem is, but the problem that we have to face is that Cube essentially creates a pseudo table by this enormous query that gives us a list of sessions. That works, but it doesn't work on the scale of GitLab.com or anything similar to that kind of scale because we just hit these enormous memory limits. So I've been trying to do some stuff with materialized views where we sort of derive that information as we go along using materialized views, but it doesn't look like we're able to do that. There's a feature in ClickHouse that doesn't exist. I can't remember what it's called. Adam did tell me earlier.
Correlated subqueries.
Correlated subqueries. ClickHouse does not support, and from their bug tracker, it doesn't look like that's on the horizon anytime soon. So I thought, okay, how can we do this? Let's go back a few steps. So what we want is a list of sessions. We want a table that contains sessions and information about those sessions. Can we do that another way? It's like, so ClickHouse is a concept of an aggregating merge tree. So in short, that means it's a materialized view. So every time an event is created, it'll copy some information to the target table materialized view, but it will automatically update and aggregate that information based on a particular key, in this case, the session ID. So for example, if we send 10 events with the same session ID, asynchronously in the background, it will aggregate those into a single row, which allows us to store the first timestamp and the last timestamp for a particular session, which is kind of all we needed, right? So then each row in that table refers to a particular session. It has information about that session, including the user ID, the session ID, which obviously we just need for aggregating, and then any of this information. So whatever we had before, so browser information, operating system information, etc. The important thing is that this is generated on the fly at insert time and not during querying. So, just skip forward a few steps. The answer is here's my list of sessions. As you can see, these are all the same session because ClickHouse hasn't aggregated these yet into one row. However, we can just force it to do that by using the final keyword, and then it aggregates it for you as we go along. And you can see
first. Can we fine-tune that sort of asynchronous refresh rate at all?
Don't know.
Like if we wanted it to happen more or less.
I would assume so, but in the documentation, it also suggests that you do it as part of the query anyway. So we could do group by domain session ID, and that would have kind of the same effect. And it suggests that you do that and not to rely. If it's important that the session ID is unique, which in our case it probably is, then it says don't rely on the fact that we've already done it. Just do a group by, and the likelihood is only grouping some, right? It's not grouping a million rows. It's grouping 1 plus, I don't know, 5 or 6. Well, worst case 100, I guess, but still much better than what we have now.
Yeah, definitely.
So you see the materialized view. Yeah, we've still got 4. So I assume most of these are page pings. I mean, in terms of how it works, it's exactly as you'd expect. So this is just a page with the browser SDK installed. It's just a blank page, but I've accepted cookies. So, we can reload that. DevKit should behave as you expect. You see the events are all going in as normal. And now you can see it's the same user ID. So let's create another user ID. So I'm just going to bin all my cookies and then reload it here. So this should now be a separate user ID and a separate session because I've binned all my cookies. So we can see new events, lovely. And here's another domain session ID. So if I say select all final, we've now got 2 sessions because it's aggregated them for us. And then if I were to reload that page and wait for the aggregation to happen again, you'll see this last timestamp update. So what was it now? 12/22/55. 12/23/40. And it we'll do that.
So my immediate question for this is regarding the columns we're storing with the session.
Mhm.
Do we need to store more than just the session ID, last timestamp, and first timestamp?
Do we need to, or
Well,
should we?
either or, because obviously right now what we're doing right now is literally duplicating the same measures and dimensions on tracked events and sessions.
Yeah.
So rather than just using tracked events to
so I asked Adam about this. I was like, is it better to store this information in the materialized view and the target table, or is it better to then query the join table, the tracked events table later on? And he said, no, store it in the materialized view because ClickHouse handles the compression. So there's not a massive overhead there. It also means that Cube is then only targeting one table.
Okay. In that case, then if we're not going to just use tracked events and just pull in that info into sessions, then my suggestion is we should be smarter with our schema and like move all the shared measures and dimensions out of like the schema to a secondary file as a shared entity.
That's what I've started doing. Although, so the issue is
some things like the custom event stuff that just got merged currently isn't applied to sessions, only tracked events, even though it's applicable to both, I think.
Yeah, so the way I want to start looking at it now is that sessions, in tracked events, I've now removed the join. There is no longer a join from tracked events to sessions. Sessions is now just a whole new table in its own right. ClickHouse handles how that data is aggregated and saved. And now Cube just has to query that table. So this works nicely in our sessions table. You can just go select all from sessions final. So Cube is always telling ClickHouse, please pre-aggregate this data correctly before giving it to me. We can count the domains, average per user seems to work great because you can just count the distinct user IDs, and that gives you useful numbers.
Doesn't final cause ClickHouse to run through the async aggregation immediately? So every time that table gets hit, it's going to run the aggregation process. Should we not use something like group by and just let that async process take place instead?
I don't know the exact mechanism of what happens there, so I'll need to double check. I don't know if calling final, I don't think calling final actually causes the asynchronous aggregation to happen, because if you go back to the table, you can see it still hasn't happened. It causes the results to be aggregated, but it doesn't necessarily cause that asynchronous thing to happen. I don't know if group by does that.
Yeah, I probably not. I'm just worried that we're basically manually running aggregation for every query.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know what the performance hit of that is. I'm also assuming the production cluster is probably doing it more often than my local one, but I don't know. So I'd be curious to know how that's set and how that works, because it doesn't seem to happen all that often on my local machine. Like it's happening a few times a minute. But I wonder if it happens more. I wonder if it is triggered more often if the rate of insert is higher, is what I'm thinking. So in a production cluster, it becomes a negligible issue, but I don't know. So yeah, the ones I need to go through the. Can you see my IDE? Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to go through the existing thing. So I want to hopefully make sure that this is a drop-in replacement in terms of Cube, and therefore the queries that the front end's making. So I'm hoping to keep the names of all the measures and the dimensions the same. Excuse me. But just replace the calculations they're doing with ones that work with our new table.
Yeah. I mean, they should all. Are we not just duplicating the event data into the sessions table? So should they not all work? I mean,
all the dimensions will work. Some of the measures won't necessarily work straight away.
I mean, we need to sort out these measures anyway because we're using them wrong.
Yeah.
Like, count is fine. Unique count is fine. But then links count shouldn't realistically exist. It should just be a dimension.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And a bunch of the others probably shouldn't exist.
We don't use most of them, do we?
No, And it's realistically, it's just because this is from the, when we first started prototyping this, trying to figure it out, we weren't really aware of what to do or not to do.
Yeah, a lot of this relies on the
Getting a lot more
join that we no longer need as
sophisticated.
well. So a lot of the, percent of repeat sessions should be pretty easy to calculate. You just grab all of the user sessions and see how many of them are repeat ones. But again, are we using that in the sessions dashboard right now? I can't remember.
You can check it would be in the built-in. I doubt anyone's built their own version, but if you check out the built-in visualizations,
Yeah, good idea.
it will tell you.
Okay, that's a problem for later.
Probably easier just to grep the
repo.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not going to worry about that now. I'll find out and then put in the work to
the measure
to
name will
later.
be identical if you just search for the measure name in the repo.
Okay. What is aberration, duration, minutes?
Yeah. And then if you switch over to git.com's built-in, do a search. So yeah, we're not in the meta, but in the YAML.
Yeah.
And it's showing up under the measure selector, which is visualization designer.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So average duration minutes, I'll just make sure that when I'm rewriting this, that it's returning a sensible answer, just calculated differently. So at the moment, we're not storing the length of each session. We're just storing the start and the end. So I started just before this call doing a date diff, but oh no, there we go. It's working now. 1223. I mean, that's definitely the wrong answer, but that's fine. We'll figure it out. That's where I got to before I started this call. I would expect the answer to that one to be what, like 23, 24. So
what is it? Should it be? It's converting it to seconds, so that should be stored as a second value.
Yeah, so it should be storing as an integer that subtracts 40 from 16, and it has not.
Is that the right uint 32? Should it?
No idea. I might have it wrong.
Is there actually a date like bracket session field type? I don't know the field types. I know there's a date type,
but it's not a date. We want a difference in strings, right? We want a difference in numbers. 32. Yeah. So no, I did unsigned integers. Yeah, so that's fine because it shouldn't be negative. Oh, unless it is negative because I've done the dates the wrong way around.
Last minus first.
That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, take end minus start. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the next problem I'm going to work on. And then I can start doing average duration, because if we can generate all that at insert time, then it's way quicker than making Cube do it at query time.
Oh yeah, definitely. I agree on that.
So that is how an aggregating merge tree works. And it's mostly magic, and I like it.
It's very cool.
The big issue here is that this is only working for sessions where cookies have been enabled. So as you saw, I've mentioned it to James and Dennis, and we'll get a product opinion on it. The short version is this works, and the alternative doesn't.
Not without a lot more fiddling to try and figure out a ClickHouse solution, which also takes into account the bobbles of Cube and the fact we don't control the query that gets delivered necessarily.
No, so yeah, that's where we are. Any questions?
I guess the only thing I'd say is, while you were explaining, I was just taking a look at final, using like select something from the table final. The things I'm seeing is it's almost 2 times slower.
Okay, cool. So we can't be doing that in Cube.
Google look, just a cursory look around at what people are saying on Google around it.
So we need a better answer to that, but that's fine.
We either need to up like the refresh time, how often it refreshes, and then use group by. I guess realistically, what we want is more or less the last session, because the last session would have the most up-to-date data, wouldn't it? And someone's session is tied to your browser, so you could resize the screen while you're in a session, which could affect the screen size check. But the browser itself, the OS, everything else should stay consistent for the most part. I don't think any of the data that we're actually necessarily like 100% interested in or most usable to us as good should be affected. Hopefully.
Yeah, what's a versioned merge tree? That's cool. There's a rabbit hole to fall down here. So
I can feel this was in my meeting. They started like talking about things, and I was starting going around rabbit holes when I should have been paying attention.
Ironic considering the meeting you were in.
Oh man, it was the most fidgety meeting I've ever been in. There were a good couple of hundred people in it, and every single one of them were non-stop moving. Me included.
Well, I mean,
to be fair.
I'm not shocked. I need to look about ClickHouse Final because you're right. If it's going to double the execution queries, and that's avoid.
Yeah, I was just looking at the affinity one. If you go out, like I got to the Altinity or whatever it is, knowledge base. I don't know what Altinity is about.
How quickly do aggregating merge trees update? Don't know. Leave it with me, but I'll definitely bear that in mind because that's important.
Play around.
Either way, I think we've found a thing that mostly works for our use case. But there's some cube stuff that needs to be done, but the database itself is now looking all right.
It's fairly easy for us to check just by not now, but I mean, just dumping a bunch of data into events and having sessions aggregate, see what final does, see what group by does, and compare the
the only issue is testing this in production. Well, on the GitLab, not production data, the GitLab the GitLab org GitLab thing is tricky. We can't just query that and see what comes out. We have to create the materialized view, which I assume will require a migration in the configurator, because we'll have to create the materialized view for each project.
Yes.
So I can't just log on to the database and just be like, here's a materialized view. I'm going to have to do that.
No,
properly.
I just meant I know you've got the data, some of the data at least locally. So it's more than what we're generating ourselves that we could just plug in and fire off.
Yeah, and then I'll try that populate command. Not that we can get it to work yesterday, but that would be really useful.
Do we know what the difference between domain session ID and domain session ID X is?
X is the IDX is index. The X is not the suffix, it's IDX is the suffix. So for each step in the index, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc.
Okay, so it's the number of repeat
the step in the step in that particular session. So
okay.
0 being the first page view, 1 being the next, I assume, page ping or page view. I don't actually know. To be honest, I didn't really look.
If that's a thing that exists, we don't even need to use timestamp. We could just use the index.
But we want to know the average length of a session.
Yeah, that's true.
I think both are useful though. Session.
I guess that would tell you how many repeats there are.
Would it?
The repeat percentage, because you'd have the index, the last index for each session.
Oh, I see. But isn't repeat just means the same user starting a second session within an amount of time? I can't see session IDX. Maybe we don't have that.
It was something Basti mentioned. I've not done.
Yeah, he did. No. No, it's just not there.
Okay, that's fine.
So that's your question. We can't use it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd be curious to know how quickly. I'll ask Adam. He might know. And my guess is that from what I've learned about ClickHouse now is that basically, as you do more stuff, it merges blocks of inserts as it goes along. So I'm wondering if the more you add, the more often it's aggregating and collapsing things together. That's my bet.
Considering how magical it's been at times, I wouldn't be surprised.
It's kind of Rails levels of magic.
It's got a secret AI just sitting in the center.
I'm a fan. I've gone from what's the point of this to this is going to solve all of our problems forever.
I would say forever, but it's what audit events always needed.
It is absolutely what audit events always need. Although I think they were looking at it. I'm sure I saw an issue a while ago where the audit events team were looking at implementing it. Which it's the perfect use case. So yeah, okay, cool. Any more questions?
No, other than just to say great work, smashing it.
We knew we'd get there eventually.
Meaningful progress, so well done.
Absolutely. All right, well, thanks for your help, and we'll catch up later.
All right, thanks for setting this up. Ciao.
All right.